You know the colors, you know the label. Now meet the man behind the fashions. 41-year-old Alexander Julian II, a world-famous designer who never forgets he's a North Carolina native son.
It's my roots, it's my every time I bleed a little bit of Carolina blue.
He may be Alexander Julian II, but he sure has a lot of firsts. He's the first fashion designer to put together a professional sports uniform. He's responsible for those now famous Charlotte Hornets purple and teal pleated suits. He's the youngest designer to ever win the Cody Award for menswear, and he's already received the prestigious Cuddy Sark Career Achievement Award in clothing design.
He hasn't lost his touch.
For Alexander Julian, it all started at Julian's, his parents' clothing store in downtown Chapel Hill.
This was my playground, and
Alex was just 12 years old when he designed his first shirt.
Blue Oxford button-down shirts with yellow collars. I mean, that was a little bit out there in those days. Still is. I did my first jacket, I guess I was 15.
By age 21, Alex had his own store in Chapel Hill, Alexander's Ambition. Father Maurice knew his son had the flair for fashion.
He had a feel for it, and having a feel for it doesn't always mean it's commercially acceptable.
But in Alex's case, it was. His mother, Mary, likes to tell of the time Alex, age 4, and his younger sister were in a store. His sister wanted to buy a dress, but Alex said no.
He said, "No, Missy, you see, this material is not good." He said, "Feel it. You can tell." And that was before he was 5 years old.
One of Alexander Julian's proudest moments came less than a month ago on October 12th. That's when he received a Distinguished Alumnus Award from his beloved University of North Carolina, a school he attended but never graduated, a place he left for New York in 1973.
Now, all of us know his work, from walking through stores, viewing our neighbors or the Cosby Show, looking in our own closet, or watching the pleated Charlotte Hornets.
On what Julian considers hallowed grounds, it was obvious. This, for him, was a significant moment.
I mean, what a kick to be able to come back here on a Carolina blue sky and all these great people and old friends and old.
One of those friends who has known Julian for years is Charlotte native and university president C.D. Spangler, Jr.
He has gone from this small town of Chapel Hill to the great city of New York and has made a name not only for himself, but for our university.
Sitting on the wall in a Carolina quad, Julian talks about what motivates him.
I love what I do,
and he says it's not the fame.
The music to my ears is that I can hear it coming. There's kind of a lovely melody to it of you know, whenever I wear your clothes, Mr. Julian, I get so many compliments. You know, it's like that's bing. You know, that rings the bell.
And Julian smiles as he remembers the day his professor walked into his store and asked, "What's hot for next season?"
And I said, "Doc, I'm not going to be here next season. I'm going to New York. I'm going for it. I'll probably be back in 6 months, but I'm going for it."
Bel Air Hotel does this. I got the recipe from them. They have on their lunch menu. It says tuna fish sandwiches. This is a tuna fish sandwich that you ain't got at home.
Fashion designer Alexander Julian says he's a living contradiction. He likes to do everything and at the same time do nothing. One of the things he enjoys most is spending time on his 33-acre estate in Connecticut outside of New York City. Out of love for the town he was raised, Alex named this place Chapel Hill North.
Chapel Hill represents so much for me and represents North Carolina, and I can't live there and do what I do, so I'm trying to do it here and make it feel like I'm back home.
It looks a lot like Chapel Hill.
It does, it does. I mean, the leaves.
Julian says he needs to live somewhere that has lots of land. It's in his blood. His grandparents lived in rural North Carolina.
to see those farms as a kid and spending time out there just made an impression on me that, you know, dirt is something that's important, and being able to put your feet in it without worrying about disease in New York City. You can walk in the park, but I wouldn't suggest it.
Julian also likes to ride around the countryside in his 1960 Porsche convertible. Though he loves his surroundings, he says getting to know people here is not quite as easy as back home.
It's not out there the way it is in North Carolina. I mean, you don't. It takes a little more time to get to know somebody, I think.
Living out here inspires him, and much of his creating is done in his basement, a basement that looks like the inside of a clothing store.
So this is where it all began, huh? This is where
That's where it all ended up.
Yeah, this is where it
Coming into this room for me is like bathing in creativity, and this is like a think tank for me. This is where all of the ideas that I spent hours and days and weeks and months and in some cases years pondering have all ended up as examples of things.
For years, Julian wondered where his creativity came from. Then one day, while being interviewed, it came to him.
She said, "What musical instrument did you study as a child?" And I was like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is great," because it suddenly came back to me that what it was my early teaching in jazz piano, and it was mathematical progressions on a given rhythm, working off of a theme where there was a rhythm, but then trying to tweak that rhythm, trying to put that sour note in one place so that the melody sounds sweeter.
This was no ordinary day at the Julian home. Alex, his wife Megan, and one of his 3 children were being featured in an upcoming edition of Robin Leach's nationally syndicated show, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Robin Leach, Michael J. Fox, Bill Cosby, there's a host of people wearing your clothes, but also a basketball team?
Yeah, the Charlotte Hornets
Everybody's heard the name Ralph Lauren. Everybody's heard the name Pierre Cardin. These have become household words. And Alex is one of those gentlemen that have become a household word. His becomes a perfect story for Lifestyles because he is successful and he is famous and he has a wonderful home and is in the process of making it bigger and better. We love those stories on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
Though the writing for the Julian segment has yet to begin, Leach says it could start out something like this.
It was 1,000,000 to 1 shot that a young man could come from the hills and farmlands of tiny Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and find extraordinary, incredible success at the very top of the fashion ladder in the big city of New York. It's just a beginning.
Perfect. Good.
His basement is racked full of clothes, 15 years of hanging in the business.
I design fabric, I put colors together, and
That's putting it in the simplest of terms for fashion designer Alexander Julian. This North Carolina native has become well known for the way he puts colors together. He's one of the people responsible for adding a flair to men's fashions. When asked, do clothes make the man?
clothes do not make the man, but they can make him better looking, they can make him more fun, they can make him more expressive. But mostly, you know, we have to get dressed, and why should it be plain white bread? Why should it be a question of just having the you know, American cheese? Why not have a little Parmigiano in there? Why not have some spice? Why not have...
Though Julian gets many of his ideas at home, most of the actual work, the testing of fabrics and designs, occurs at his studios just off Fifth Avenue near the Garment District in New York City.
This season, I guess we'll probably make 20% of the sweaters in Italy and the balance there.
The man talking, keeping a close eye on the company, is Julian president Jack Simpson. Simpson, who is from Statesville, North Carolina, and a Morehead scholar at UNC, joined the company in 1981. He's seen it grow to a multi-million-dollar business.
The rough figure, Drew, would probably be $300 million, of which he has had a long-standing relationship in Japan, one of the first American designers to go there 12 years ago. He's been in Canada for 10 years.
Is $300 million pretty big?
Substantial, yeah.
Julian and his clothes have been featured in just about every fashion magazine, including two of the biggest, Gentleman's Quarterly, or GQ, and Esquire.
He is one of America's leading designers, no doubt about it.
Bob Beauchamp, who left GQ to become fashion editor at Esquire, has known Julian for about 15 years.
I always picture us as like a mad scientist with all these, interweaving threads and subduing colors in some cases, but in other cases really bringing it to life.
And talk about bringing something to life, Julian is racing to new heights. He's designing the uniforms for father and son race car drivers Mario and Michael Andretti. His name is already on their suits. As you know, he designed the Charlotte Hornets uniforms. Now he's designing the new suits for the Charlotte Knights baseball team. And he and his associates are putting together the color scheme for Knights Castle, the team's home.
It's all back to striping and menswear and taking the color that Charlotte was famous for with the teal, but bringing it back in with a new way.
Why experiment in Charlotte?
I think of Charlotte, I guess, as a kind of an enlarged Chapel Hill, and Chapel Hill was a springboard for me, and I guess you could say that Charlotte and what we're doing there could be a springboard.
Testing ground?
Testing ground.
When you walk into Alexander Julian's clothing store in Charlotte, don't be surprised to see Alex himself waiting on customers.
Stick a tag in there. I don't know if anybody would look at it and say it's that without seeing it, but it's for a fairly conservative. There's colors. It's,
what size is it?
That's a large. Yeah.
Julian, who lives just outside of New York City, knows it's very important for him to be here. Plus, he enjoys it.
It is absolutely the greatest thrill you can have. I do it because I enjoy it. I do it because I like to learn. I do it because I like to see on the ultimate consumer what works for them.
And he adds he never wants to be too far removed from his customers, since they are the ones who keep him in business.
I mean, my stuff is designed for real people to enjoy in real life. It's not designed for runway. It's not designed for newspapers or fashion editorials or whatever. It's designed for real people, and that's why I'm here.
Charlotte Observer fashion editor Louise Leone has been a Julian admirer for a long time.
I can't think of anybody else out of North Carolina who's made the name for themselves in fashion that Alex Julian has.
One of the most important North Carolina ties Alexander Julian now has is with the NBA's Charlotte Hornets.
He was part of the birth and the upbringing of this franchise.
It was team owner George Shin's idea to have Julian design those teal and purple uniforms, making the Hornets the first professional sports team to have a uniform designed by an internationally known designer.
When we decided that we wanted to have something unusual to add a little class to the Charlotte Hornets, that we decided we'd pick a international name to see if we could get them to design our uniform. His name was just automatic. I mean, here was a North Carolinian. It was a perfect tie-in.
Hornets rookie J.R. Reed will wear that uniform 82 times this season.
I've always been a big fan of Alexander Julian. I liked his clothes since high school, and I really like the uniforms. I think a lot of people have recognized them, and I know all the guys really like them. I like the shorts myself because I like big things, and shorts are kind of boxers, so it fits me a little bit better.
And for Alexander Julian, the fit couldn't be better. He's now fitting the Charlotte Knights baseball team with new uniforms, as well as coming up with a color scheme for their new stadium. And Julian is hoping Charlotte gets an NFL team. He's already talking about designing their uniforms. A store in Charlotte designing our basketball and baseball uniforms and possibly a football uniform? It's obvious Alexander Julian has designs on Charlotte.
It's a Tar Heel born and a Tar Heel bred, and when I die, I'm a Tar Heel dead. So